we're in the second volume. The second volume is where we are entering the Mahayana, right? The practices for beings of great capacity. Okay, so now what is, sorry. Yeah, okay, so we have these three different, let's see, go back to the text and just show the outline here. Right? Chapters are a little different than the outline, though. That's the English version's way of putting out chapters is a little different. So the original outlines like this: stages of the path for persons of great capacity. Training the mind. 3. Training the mind in the stages of the path for persons of great capacity, which has these two subsections showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana, and B, how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. Okay, so training the stages, training the mind in the stages of the path, right? So we're talking about, like Rinpoche keeps mentioning, how important it is to have a broad-minded way of thinking, right? To have an expansive way of thinking. Even the term for bodhicitta itself, right? There are two most common terms for bodhicitta. One is bodhicitta, that's just a Sanskrit word. Tibetan word is a conversion of from the bodhicitta becomes Jamchuki Sem. Another word is Semke. Semke. So Sem means mind. Ge means well, it's kind of it's a so what's the word when you make a word shorter? it's an abbreviated version. Yeah, not a contraction. It's like a contraction, abbreviated form of some Gechiruto. So Gechempo means vast, broad. So Semge, which is the same as bodhicitta, it's equivalent term, means making the mind expansive, right? Expanding your mind and mind expansion. So this mind expansion, and when we're living just our day-to-day lives, as Rinpoche keeps talking about, how valuable, how meaningful, how useful is it to have a broad way of thinking? So, of course, yes, meditating, doing formal, sitting down and really, focusing, giving yourself a chance to focus the mind and think about these topics and reflect. Okay, what was the kindness of my mother like? Okay, think about all beings being your mother. Again, developing an understanding of previous lives, thinking about the reasoning to establish it, right? All these things, reflect on them in a quiet, seated, formal situation is very good, but also throughout day-to-day life, right? And day-to-day life, meaning just starting to develop the view of other beings as being your friend, right? Instead of being the source of your problems, it's generally people, animals too. Generally, we don't think about, the types of beings other than people and animals, whether you believe they exist or not that important for this conversation, right? You can still develop bodhicitta. Okay, whether you don't think about that or whether you think about that or not. But the people and animals that we can see directly in front of us, we usually think of them as the source of our problems, right? You're rude, you hurt me, you're being bad, you're doing the wrong thing, you're not respecting me, you're not giving me what I asked for, you're not giving me what I need, you're not giving me the space I need, you're in my face, right? You looked at me funny. Why'd you look at me like that? If it's an animal, you're in my house. Get out of my house, right? If I'm in a bug or a spider or an ant, whatever, right? Or a mouse or some other animal that's a mystery animal and carries house. You're in my space. So bodhicitta, even though we might not be doing a formal meditation practice at the time, just changing that mindset and first recognizing it, right? Because we can't change it before it arises. Changing means something's already there in the mind, and then you consciously, intentionally shift it to a different way of thinking, a different perspective. So, yeah, the initial thought's going to be that reaction of self-cherishing. I am most important. You are not me. You are not my team. You are not my side. You are not my loved one. You are not my friend. So therefore, I want to get away from you. I want to push you away. I want to harm you. That's going to be the initial reaction. That's called anger, right? I mean, broad spectrum of emotions come under that basic category of anger. Irritation, all the way from mild, slight irritation, annoyance, all the way up to like, you know, deep, dark revenge, like like or just completely cruelty that really just wants to harm, which happens in the world, and we see all the harm that's caused by people who have that attitude, right? Clearly, of course, it's mixed, comes from fear a lot of times, right? But this is what I'm saying. So self-cherishing, that was the source root of that, right? So just taking that, recognizing whatever is that expression of anger for you, and then recognizing, oh, this is anger. Recognizing it. This is irritation. I am cutting myself off from this person. I'm not including them in my inner circle. I'm not including them as part of me. And again, what is we talk about inner circle, outer circle now in kind of modern psychology language, but just going back to what Shantideva said, right? The Bodhicharyavatara. Again, I don't have the quote right in front of me, but something like, suffering is suffering, right? So why should I care if it's my suffering or another being suffering? And the logic is wonderful, right? Because then you might say, well, because it's mine. It's not theirs. And theirs is theirs. It's not mine. That's why. But then you think about, and this is Shantideva goes through, and there's several verses in this section, right? Well, what about the fact that you're working, you're studying? Who's that for? You're going through all this sometimes quite stressful, difficult situations, experiences. You're willing to do that. Why? Because you're thinking of removing the suffering of a future person. That's not you either. Right? You're not, the person sitting down in your room having a nice drink or retired and enjoying the beach and right? So you're willing to endure some kind of struggle or difficulty for the sake of a person who might not even ever come to exist because you could die before tomorrow anyway, right? So other beings, okay, so why not just work to remove the suffering of all beings equally? And again, especially combining that with the understanding that fundamentally, in the most fundamental level, there is no difference, right? There really is no difference. Yeah, I'm me, I'm not you. Okay, Buddha's teachings, Buddha did not try to erase the distinction between me and you, right? I mean, not try to say that somehow we're all one being or one consciousness. And it's just logical. Again, if that was the case, what would be the problem? Just logically speaking. I mean, not like maybe it would be a great world, but what would be I mean, why is that not possible, logically speaking? Thoughts? Like all beings somehow share a consciousness, one grand consciousness or something.
I can't tell what Scott is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So if we share a consciousness, I all know each other's minds. That we all know each other's minds. That's definitely not the case.
Very good. Right. Okay, that's one, right? One thing. Okay, well then how do you account for the fact that we have all different experiences from each other, different thoughts, different minds? I mean, that's what mind means. The thoughts and experiences you have, those are minds. We're not all having the same one, right? And then another reason, which is just an extension of that, is that there'd be no need to become enlightened, to work to become enlightened, or to transform our minds, to discipline our minds, because the Buddha already did that. We're all one mind. So, I mean, this is more in the context of someone who has the view. It's very common, a really true, really common view that once you achieve liberation or enlightenment, then your mind becomes part of this expansive, all embracing, one mind of all. But the thing is, the Buddha already did that. So then, if the Buddha already did it, then there's no need to become enlightened again because the mind, there's one mind, became enlightened or enlightened. Anyway, the point is, we have a distinction. It is true that I'm me, I'm not you. But two main things can come in and cut if we want to use that as a basis for cherishing ourselves more than others, thinking that we're more important than others, there are two main ways of thinking to counter that, to cut that foolish way of thinking. One is simply that fundamental, in the fundamental level, we are equal. We have the same exact need to be happy, desire to be happy, the same exact need to be free of suffering, to not have suffering. So there's not really any logical reason to preference one over the other. But two, together with that, we can also recognize that, yes, I am not you, but let's see, is Willimantic to the west or to the east? Is Scotland to the west or to the east? But I'm asking a geography question. What you guys are like? I don't know. Like where? Scotland is neither in the west or east. It's here, right? We're in Scotland, Connecticut, right? Okay, from here, Willimantic is to the west, right? Rhode Island, the ocean's to the east, right? Okay, we'll go to the beach, go to Rhode Island, and then you're at the ocean. Scotland's to the west, right? Okay, so here and there, right, depend on each other. Depends on which side you're on. Okay, right now we're inside. When we walk outside, we're outside, right? So being here, the outside is over there. As soon as you get outside, the outside is here, the inside is over there. I and you are the same. Me and you are the same, right? I depend on you just as a concept. Even conceive of me, right? Depends on you. Not only the conception, but the reality too. In other words, the causal reality. How do I have a body? How do I have my own body? Because there were parents who were you, who were not me. They were different from me, right? My parents created this body. And then how many people sustained it, right? Countless. So how can you even begin to count the number of people who contributed to just the single, tea you're drinking right now or the breakfast you had this morning? Not to mention throughout your whole life, how much food you've eaten, the air you've breathed in, the water you're drinking, the places that have protected you from the elements, right, that you've been in. Can you even begin to count? I mean, I don't think the world could hold, right? Especially when you go back in time. It's like, well, then you have to consider all the humans who contributed to our current world, which goes back to the beginning of humanity. Okay, so not only do we depend on others for literally just to have the conception that I am me, depends on the conception of you, but to have your education, your knowledge, your personality, what we think of as me is like my personality, right? How does your personality arise? Did it just come from nothing? You just decided one day, I'm going to be like that. And even if you did, maybe you decided, oh, I want to be like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or you want to be like a teacher. I want to be like Otto Rinpoche, like and Sarwan Tak Rinpoche, a teacher who passed away in 2022, was it 2022 now, right? 3 it was, yeah, 3 years ago. So we want to be like them. So we decide, okay, so that could shape our personality, but again, it's being shaped by another person, right? It's exactly the whole point is nothing arises in a vacuum, right? So that way of thinking throughout your daily life, right? Recognizing, recalling those kinds of reflections shifts your perspective. So instead of you're a bad, get out of my way, you can, yeah, that arises at first, but then slowly remind yourself, oh, this person is contributing to my well-being. This person is frankly needed for me to even have a me, literally, in the most literal level. Just be me, you need to be there. And then another beautiful way of thinking of how precious other beings are to help open your heart, expand that mind, is to think about how each and every living being is required for your own enlightenment. Enlightenment or awakening is like the most happiness that could possibly exist. So you want to have true, ultimate, the deepest, best happiness there is. I usually like to think that, Buddhists, you want to use, you can describe Buddhists in many different ways. The best way to describe Buddhists as happiness connoisseurs, right? It's like we want the best happiness, right? You don't want a limited little, little baby happiness. Okay, some nice food, nice tea. Okay, it's nice, yeah. But you drink it, okay. Now it's gone. Oh, it's already lukewarm. It's not even that satisfying anymore. Already the happiness is gone, right? Within moments. Buddha's happiness never is gone. Happiness of that mind. And how does it arise? From bodhicitta. That's the main cause, right? How this so showing developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana, means that's the first step to having this great happiness of the Buddha. It's the only way. So bodhicitta means what? The mind that it's the mind that has those two aspirations. Remember, Rinpoche gave the definition, right? Using the quote from Abhisamada Alamkara, Ornament of Clear Realizations, right? What is mind expansion? To seek the desire for enlightenment for the sake of others. The desire for enlightenment for the sake of others. Okay, so two aspirations: benefit others, achieve enlightenment. Benefit others doesn't mean just a few others, every other living being. Okay, so that person in front of you who's annoying you, who's being rude, who you have the perception of them being rude, getting in the way of what you want, and of course there's just simple day-to-day things. Oh, there's a big line, someone's just in front of me, someone cuts me off on the road. Then there's bigger life things. Someone stole your partner, right? So, stole, you know what I mean? Like your partner has an affair with someone. Oh, that's like big thing, right? Or, gets the promotion you wanted, or, this, really cheats you. You go into a business partnership with someone and lose millions of dollars. Like these things really happen and really, can damage a person. Yes, it's harm, sure. Or just killing you, right? Just killing you. Happens all the time, unfortunately. So, yes, there's harm that comes, real harm, but to recognize that if I don't have love and compassion for this being, then I don't have bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the desire for enlightenment for the sake of all living beings. Okay? Includes the one who kills you, includes the one who deceives you, who, steals your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Okay. So that means every living being that you ever meet, no matter what they're doing to you, they're the cause of your ultimate happiness. You're thinking that way, then that makes your mind expansive. Now, when your mind is expansive, right? Rinpoche keeps talking about how throughout these last several weeks, right? Then you don't have these. The phrase in Tibetan is namtok. It's a little hard to give an exact translation of, but a lot of times, even English speaking teachers will just say the Tibetan term because it's so hard to translate. But anyway, namtok. Namtok, it could just mean in general thinking, conceptuality, but it doesn't mean that. It means a kind of thinking that's sort of laden with kind of an attitude of suspicion towards others, right? An attitude of like, oh, what are they doing over there? It's like this kind of like fear-based thinking out of self-cherishing. How are they going to harm me? How are they trying to, what are they trying to do? It's kind of even just like projecting motivations onto people. That's part of it, right? At all. Like there's no need to really project motivations onto people. To think, oh, they must have thought, they must have tried, they must be trying to do this, that. How do we know? It could be a Buddha for all we know, because Neil said, right? You can't actually see their thoughts. You never know what someone's really thinking. The politicians you hate, right? They're so mean, they're so evil, they're so self-centered, the billionaires, whatever it is, right? Whoever you hate. We can't really know what's in their mind. Yeah, we can understand their actions and how they influence the rest of the world and other people around them, and work to create institutions, systems that help to tame those harmful actions and change the course of overall society, of course, right? This is the value we have of being in democratic societies, that we have the power. We do have power to change the world this way. But in terms of our feeling towards others, we never have to feel hatred towards them, right? Because all the reasons I just said earlier, but also we can never really know what's in their mind. So that's namdok, this idea of like way of thinking where it's like, oh, there's, because you get so obsessed. We get so obsessed in this rumination on what other people are thinking and trying to do, and you know, just the mind kind of spins, right? But it's never really, those are not minds which are valid, right? Those are all invalid minds, not the way, meaning thoughts. Our minds are thoughts that assume or believe we know what another person's motivation is, are all wrong. Okay. Now, if you want to say, well, it could be right, maybe that really is their motivation, but the sense that you know for sure is wrong because you never can know for sure. Okay. And when you say they could be a Buddha, you're gonna be like, well, that, clearly that person is like the general of a military killing thousands of people for no, innocent people. How can they be a Buddha? We just don't know. True, it would be odd. We really don't know. Right? I mean, I don't know. That would be very. I don't know. Maybe that's not possible. I don't know. But we still. Yeah. The point is, we can't see what's in their mind. Okay, let's get back into the text. Are there any questions or anything regarding what I just said or from previous classes? And I can always take notes if I'll do my best to answer anything. I can write it down and then we can request Rinpoche later.
But would you say this nam tog? Nam tog stuff?
Yeah. Well, num tok, but
Nam.
yeah, it's a sound we don't really have in English, but close. Good.
So you say it's a correctly assuming consciousness that happens to be true, or is that actually completely a wrong consciousness?
Right. So now Neil is, just for everyone's sake, he's referencing a list or a taxonomy of different cognitive states or belief states that are in the Buddhist texts. There are seven main ones that are discussed, and one of them is called the correctly assuming consciousness. That's where you don't really have the direct experience of something, just seeing it or experiencing with your senses, and you also haven't really been able to get at that fact or concept through like definitive reasoning process, but you still believe it and it happens to be true, right? So in terms of like Western epistemology, if is anyone familiar with JTB, justified true belief, is the notion that, right, so it would be like a true belief but without the justification. Okay, forget that if you're not familiar with it. But so he's saying, so if you are doing this kind of projecting on someone's motivations, and it is accurate, I mean, it happens to be accurate, even though you don't really have, a genuinely valid reason to believe it, then would that be a correctly assuming consciousness, or would it just be wrong? Well, what do you think? What is the difference there? I'm putting it back to you. Yeah. So an example of a wrong consciousness, just very, very simple example, always, referenced again and again in the text. So seeing a white snow mountain as blue, right? It could be somehow early morning, the way the sun is shining. I remember when I lived in Dharamsala, North India, going to college there, Sarah College. Sometimes it would really, you could see the snow mountains from the campus. It's quite beautiful. I was living on the second, third floor, I think, of the dorm. And sometimes early morning, right when the sun is rising, around 5 a.m., then the whole sky sort of turns this bluish hue, and those snow mountains really appear to be blue. So, or you're just wearing sunglasses or whatever it is. So that's wrong because the snow mountain is white, color of the snow mountain is white, appearing to be blue. Okay, so that's just a mistake. Or another good example is, again, when we have these kinds of disturbing emotions like anger that we're talking about so much. So anger, this kind of tunnel vision. You look at a person, see one action they do, and then the concept that you have in your mind, right, or the numdog, right, this kind of projecting, ignorant projecting, delusional projecting, is taking that person as being 100% negative, 100% bad, right? When of course they also have good qualities too. So that is also a wrong consciousness, this perception, this thought of someone being 100% bad. Okay. or in this case, it's like to really talk about this, we could just say when you impute a motivation that's just completely off, right? You see someone speeding along the road, you think, oh, they're crazy, they're just some dumb kid who's just trying to have fun. Well, no, they have someone in the back seat with a broken leg just trying to get to the hospital, right? So what do you think?
Um, so I think it's a wrong consciousness because it can't ascertain the motivation of that person uh, as it actually exists.
Okay, I can't ascertain, but that's the whole point with that's the whole point of the correctly assuming consciousness is they don't ascertain their object ever, but they still just kind of happen to be correct about the object.
So maybe the mind ascertaining the object is a correctly assuming consciousness. But yeah, so maybe it is a
Yeah, well, I think it's part of the difficulty is the language again, right? Because we're using technical terms in that coming from Tibet, the way they're used in Tibetan, and then translating them, which gives different implications. But ascertain in this context, generally how the word is used, means it's only possible for an actual valid mind to ascertain something. So these correctly assuming consciousness, we just wouldn't use that word ascertain. So you could say they engage with the object, they perceive the object, they apprehend the object, they don't ascertain it. So yeah, in this case, you would be apprehending the object, but again, not in a correct way, but it's not, I mean, correct meaning, like even that word, I don't know. It's hard to like think in the Tibetan using those terms and trying to express it in English when the terms aren't really, there's no solid terminology yet for these concepts. But the yeah, it would be a correctly assuming consciousness because it's apprehending an object that exists. That's a simple way to say it. What it's apprehending exists. If the way that you're perceiving something or apprehending something, the object simply doesn't exist, like the person who's 100% negative when you see them and have really strong anger, right? There's no person who's 100% negative. That just doesn't exist. Okay, so good question. Anything else? Yes, Jason.
I mean, wouldn't many attempts to understand other people's minds be inferential realizers?
Yeah, good question.
Right. I mean, so say you're a waiter at a restaurant and somebody sits down at a table, right? Like this person's hungry, right? So you can infer from them walking into your restaurant and sitting down at the table that they're hungry, right? So
well,
this is
I would say I don't know if that's right. I would say no, that's not right.
You would say that that's not right.
But I'd say that's a big question. Yeah, that's a big. I mean, to what degree can you genuinely infer another person's mental states, meaning that there really is no possibility of being mistaken, right? So someone comes in, sits down, and maybe they just wanted to use the restroom and they saw your restaurant and they're waiting for someone to leave the restroom and they just sit down, right?
I think infallibility isn't the right standard for knowing other people's minds.
Okay, but it's the right standard for knowledge in general in this system of epistemology in the Buddhist, I mean the Nalanda tradition, Pramana tradition of epistemology. Yeah, it's a part of the definition of the Pramana, right? A mind which is newly non-deceptive. The graduate's object. Newly non-deceptive. So infallible. I don't know. Again, if infallible, I'm not sure if that means the exact same thing as non-deceptive here, but maybe it does. But that's a good question to keep coming back to again and again. Okay, so where did we leave off? Showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana. Okay, question. Given that you should enter the Mahayana in the above mentioned manner, again, that just means, just like the last line of the prior section, it says, thus enter the Mahayana. After you, thus enter the Mahayana after you have developed great respect for it, induced by seeing its good qualities from various perspectives. Okay, so that's like the first chapter of the Bodhicharyavatara. It's called The Benefits of Bodhicitta. So that whole chapter is laying out the benefits of bodhicitta, which this current text quotes from a few times, quite a few times. And that's what it means by in that way, right? In the above mentioned manner. What is the entrance? Reply: the conqueror taught that there are no Mahayana vehicles other than the perfection vehicle and the Tantra vehicle. Whichever of these two you enter, the only entrance is the spirit of enlightenment. Okay, again, there are two Mahayana vehicles. So if you ever hear, has anyone ever heard this explanation or description that there's like three main traditions of Buddhism: Theravada, Zen, and Vajrayana? Has anyone heard that before? Or Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana? Like that. Okay, that is just frankly, a mistaken way of understanding the Buddhist teachings or the different traditions within Buddhism. So what's being mistaken there? Well, it's a conflation of tradition and vehicle. Okay, tradition and vehicle. So vehicle really means an individual practitioner's mind, right? And Rinpoche mentioned this, right? What makes it a Mahayana or not, a Mahayana teaching or not, is not the text, it's not the teaching, it's the person's mind who's practicing it. Okay? If you have bodhicitta in your mind, you are a Mahayana person. If you don't, you are not a Mahayana person. Okay? Theravada and Zen are traditions that are composed of many millions of people in different places. There's geographies, there are texts, there are histories that are associated with those traditions. That's not talking about a person's mind, right? Okay, so Hinayana Mahayana is in relation to an individual person's mind. Okay, Hinayana person is someone who has renunciation, striving to achieve liberation, but not bodhicitta. As soon as you have renunciation plus bodhicitta, you're a Mahayana person. Without either of those two things, well, you're just like me, like an ordinary person, right? Neither a Hinayana nor Mahayana person. I'm not a Mahayana person, but I am a monk in a Mahayana tradition, the Tibetan tradition. Now, is the Tibetan tradition a Mahayana tradition or a Vajrayana tradition? Is it Mahayana or Vajrayana? Well, this is another mistake in that depiction of the Buddhist traditions. The Vajrayana is Mahayana necessarily. There is no Vajrayana without being Mahayana. So that's what Tsongkhapa is saying here, right? The Tantra vehicle means Vajrayana. Okay, so there are no Mahayana vehicles other than the perfection vehicle and the Tantra vehicle. So those are both the perfection vehicle and the Tantra vehicle are both Mahayana, and of course they're both practiced and taught in the Tibetan tradition. Okay, they're also both practiced and taught in other countries as well, and especially historically, they had been in Indonesia, in Thailand, in China. These days, it's more or less limited to the Himalayan regions in terms of the Vajrayana practices, more or less limited to the Himalayan regions and a little bit in Japan. And China seems like they have some too, but I'm not quite clear to me. Yeah. Yes.
Is the perfection vehicle Dzogchen?
No. The perfection vehicle is the Paramitayana. The Paramitayana vehicle of the six perfections. It just means people practicing. Dzogchen is also a Vajrayana vehicle, right? I mean, Dzogchen actually has its own system. So Dzogchen is one of the Tibetan practice traditions or teaching traditions from the Nyingma, associated most closely with the Nyingma lineage, teachings of Guru Rinpoche. And there's a system of 9 yanas actually. So that includes the Shravakayana, the Buddhayana, the Paramitayana or the perfection vehicle, and then it goes up to Adi Yoga, Anu Yoga, Maha Yoga, and these different 9 different yanas. Yeah.
Talking about the great perfections, that's probably why this is
Right, the word is the great perfection, yeah. But it's a different word in Tibetan where, see, this is like a challenge. I know I don't want to waste time talking about language and translation, but it really does create confusion unless you kind of understand where these terms are coming from. But yeah, Zolpa Champo, right? Zolpa is to like complete something or to bring something to perfection, right? So that's where we get this perfection. Champo means great or big, right? Just like the Mahayana, Maha, right? Tekla Champo, Maha. Maha means great. So it's the Maha Zolpa, the great completion, right? Great perfection. But when we talk about the six perfections, now we're talking about the Parokuchimpa, the paramitas, right? Now, frankly, there's no etymological like connection between the word perfect to perfect something in English and the Sanskrit or Tibetan terms for this. But the terms in Sanskrit and Tibetan, what do they mean? To go to the other side, to go somewhere. Why did that become perfection in English? I don't know. Someone at some point, some translator thought, well, that means to perfect something. I don't know. And then it just became the norm. Okay. Anyway, paramitayana. And that just means, again, so it's basically all the six, developing bodhicitta, practicing the six perfections. Okay. Tantra vehicle just adds on top of that. You still do that. You add on top of that the practices of generation stage and completion stage. And that's tantra. Okay. Whichever of these two you enter, the only entrance is the spirit of enlightenment. Once you have generated the spirit in your mind, you are recognized as a Mahayana practitioner, even though you may not have generated any other good quality. When you separate from this spirit, no matter what other good qualities you may have, such as the knowledge of emptiness, etc., you lapse from the Mahayana, falling to the level of a Shravaka and the like. This point is taught in many Mahayana scriptures and is also proved by reason. Okay, so which I already mentioned some of those scriptures and also the reason. And yeah, okay, good. The initial entrance into the Mahayana is determined by the development of the spirit alone. A subsequent departure from the Mahayana is determined by its laws alone. Hence, being a Mahayana practitioner or not is contingent upon the existence or non-existence of the spirit. You become a conqueror's child immediately after generating the spirit. Conqueror's child is another term for bodhisattva. Right? In Tibetan, Gyalse. In Sanskrit, it's Jina Putra, okay, conqueror's child. As Shanti Deva is engaging in the bodhisattva deeds, bodhisattva charyavatara. So when I say the guide to the bodhisattva's way of life, it's the same text, just another translation of that title. Okay. It says, the moment helpless beings bound in the prison of cyclic existence develop the spirit of enlightenment, they are called children, Sugatas. Okay, so that's another term, children of the Sugatas. Sugata is a word for a Buddha, which means one gone to bliss. Someone who is gone, who is blissed out. Okay. Sugata. And also, today I have been born in the Buddha's family. I have become a child of the Buddhas. Okay, that's where we left off in the last class. So that's like once you generate bodhicitta, then yeah, today I've been born in the Buddhist family, right? It's like a new birth, right? You are now a Buddhist child. Okay, so that means, what does that mean when you're the child of the Buddha? Well, it means the Buddhas are going to take care of you, right? The Buddhas are going to help you grow. And it also means that you will grow into a Buddha, right? You now have the DNA to grow, to become fully awakened Buddha once you give rise to this bodhicitta. Okay, now again, giving rise to it, you can do, right, two ways. You can do it in we use these terms, contrived way or an uncontrived way. I mean, you have to do it in a contrived way many times over a long period of time to get to a point where it's uncontrived. What does that mean? Right? Well, there's an analogy given. So the contrived way of bodhicitta, so that's like if we sit and do meditation during this class and we'll meditate on bodhicitta, it will be contrived. So that's likened to, has anybody actually seen a sugarcane plant? Sugarcane. In India, it's very common because, of course, they actually have these little stalls around the country where they have little grinders. Actually, there's still some hand powered ones. A lot of them are powered by a motor now. And they take the sugarcane. They have big, piles or stacks of these cane, big green stalks, and they put it through this grinder, and you get some juice at the other end. Put some lemon, delicious, nice, refreshing sugarcane juice. Okay, and so, but this analogy is related to the sugarcane. So it's the contrived bodhicitta is like the sweetness of the outer bark of the sugarcane, okay, the outer skin. And then the uncontrived bodhicitta is like the sweetness of the actual sugar inside. Okay. So I don't know if there what else we could relate that to. Maybe a banana or an orange or something. It's like, but it's a little different. But like the point being, yeah, there's a little mild sweetness on the bark, right? On the skin. There's a little mild sweetness, but it's nothing like the actual sugar inside. Okay. So this is like for us when we're developing bodhicitta in our daily practice. Yeah, it's going to be something meaningful. It's powerful. It changes your life, changes how you act. But there's still something kind of a very, very deep level of experience of bodhicitta that we need to work towards where it becomes uncontrived. That moment where it becomes uncontrived, that's when it's really called the genuine bodhicitta and you become a Mahayana person. Thus it says that once you have generated this spirit, you are called the bodhisattva. So generated it in uncontrived manner. Moreover, the life of Maitreya, Arya Maitreya Vimoksha, speaks of persons being bodhisattvas if they have this spirit, even though they have not trained in the bodhisattva deeds. So here it's uncovered. This text, the Great Treatise, is one of the reasons it's so extensive, is because Tsongkhapa throughout all along the way gives a lot of quotations to back up what he's saying. So here's a quotation. O child of good lineage, although a precious diamond breaks, it still outshines all special ornaments of gold. It does not lose its name, precious diamond, and it still removes all poverty. O child of good lineage, similarly, those who have developed the precious diamond, which is the spirit of enlightenment, and the aspiration to omniscience, although they lack its application, still outshine all the golden ornaments, which are the good qualities of the Shravaka and Pratyeka Buddha. They do not lose the name Bodhisattva, and they still remove all the poverty of cyclic existence. Okay, so this example is quite nice, right? A precious diamond, you can have a nice big hope diamond. Okay, sure, it's maybe worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, if it falls and breaks, or somehow, I don't know if it breaks or falls, but somehow it gets broken up, maybe, it's still, there are all those fragments, they're still diamonds, right? Still extremely valuable. Okay, still removes all poverty. So, you've developed the precious diamond of the spirit of enlightenment. Although they lack its application, that means, again, not engaging in the 6 perfections, right? That's what it means. The application means the application of the 6 perfections. Still outshine all the golden ornaments, right? It's still more valuable than gold. And it's nice here that it's not, again, none of this meaning the praise of the Mahayana, the praise of bodhicitta is not a denigration of the Pratyeka Buddha and Sravakayanas or the Hinayana, right? Praising, a PhD is not denigrating someone who just has a high school diploma, right? No, it's just a different thing, right? And it is a different thing. There's no need to hide the reality. Now, as Rinpoche mentioned, at the same time, there is some need to use language skillfully and respectfully. So because there is a sense that Mahayana, there is a perception in the world by some that Mahayana teachings denigrate Hinayana, then His Holiness has decided to not use the term Hinayana at all. Just the term itself can seem denigrating by having Hina means less, right? So, or lower, really. Low. So instead of using that term, he just refers to the Pali tradition, right? But again, that's in one context. Now, if you're really just talking about the spiritual paths, the options of what kind of motivation is going to drive your spiritual path, your spiritual life and practice, then it's relevant to make the distinction Hinayana, Mahayana. So you can just see, okay, well, for Hinayana, you need renunciation. For Mahayana, you need bodhicitta. Like that's again, it's more of a philosophical, analysis of the spiritual path, as opposed to a label for a whole global, tradition that exists in dozens of, many countries with hundreds of millions of people. So that's why we don't want to call people Hinayana because that could be seen as denigrating, right? But we can still understand in terms of the path what would make the distinction. Okay, it's clear. But anyway, the point I was making is just this: that he says all the golden ornaments, which are the good qualities. So he's still saying, okay, maybe they're not diamonds, but they're gold. Right? Also, the protector, Nagarjuna, in his precious garland, Ratnavali says, if you and the world wish to obtain unexcelled enlightenment, its root is the spirit of enlightenment, firm as the king of mountains. Okay, so here's Nagarjuna. Further, the Tantra bestowing the, and again, just to reiterate in this quote as well, to achieve enlightenment, yes, the root is bodhicitta, firm as the king of mountains. So again, emphasizing that not just us sitting here meditating on bodhicitta today, but this firm, stable bodhicitta, right, where it's really with you wherever you go all the time. It's your go-to state of mind, your go-to motivation, right? That's like the sugar inside the sugarcane plant. Okay, but we need to do our practice today to get that. Okay, it's again that it's just a matter of time. Just a matter of time. Okay, how are we doing on time? I just want to double check. Oh, pretty good. Further, the Tantra bestowing the initiation of Vajrapani, the Vajrapani Abhishek Mahatantra says. And if you caught the term Maha in the Sanskrit there, you can see it's really saying the great initiation, or the great Tantra, the Mahatantra. Okay. Oh, great Bodhisattva. So just to give a little bit of comments on what's coming. So this is now coming from a tantra, actually. So this is very interesting, right? Tsongkhapa, he started off this section saying there are two Mahayana vehicles: perfection vehicle, tantra vehicle, Paramitayana, Tantrayana. Okay. It's also called the secret mantra vehicle. It's another common word you'll see. Secret mantra vehicle means tantric vehicle or Tantrayana. And then here he's actually quoting from a tantra, right? So he doesn't actually quote from tantras that often throughout the text. So, but here I think it's important because again, it's recognizing, it's acknowledging that even the tantra, because there could be a misconception that tantra is something different from Mahayana, right? Then people might think, oh, I can practice Vajrayana without first generating bodhicitta. So this quote is making very clear, no, that would not be Buddhist Vajrayana anyway. So there are Buddhist Tantra. There are tantric practices and traditions that are not Buddhist, right? Then they don't necessarily need bodhicitta, but they're also not going to become causes for enlightenment, as far as the Buddha, the Buddhist version of enlightenment is concerned. O great Bodhisattva, Manjushri, this tantric mandala is exceedingly secret, unfathomable, very profound, and vast. It is unsuitable to teach it to sinful beings. Rajapani, you say this mandala is very rare. Since I have not heard about it, to whom should it be explained? Vajrapani replied, O Manjushri, once those who have entered meditation on the spirit of enlightenment have attained it. Manjushri, these bodhisattvas who practice the bodhisattva deeds, the door to Tantra, should enter into the tantric mandala of the great sublime wisdom initiation. However, those who have not fully attained the spirit of enlightenment should not enter it. They should not even enter and see the mandala. Moreover, do not teach them the gestures and mantras. Okay, so really pointing out that Tantra practice, even getting initiation, seeing the mandala, learning the gestures and mudras, only for someone who's actually in the Mahayana already, for a bodhisattva. Okay, now these days, or maybe even at points in the past, don't know how people really talked about things, but all I know is what I've seen from my teachers and the texts that I've seen. His Holiness the Dalai Lama will often give, when he's giving an empowerment, Because the question can come, well, you have a quote like this, it's Tsongkhapa's making this point. Does that mean that I shouldn't, no one should attend an empowerment or initiation, tantric empowerment or initiation if they're not, don't have this genuine, real, bodhicitta like the sugar inside the sugar cane, or the juice you can call it inside the sugar cane? Well, His Holiness says, as long as you have an aspiration to develop genuine bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness and some understanding, some feeling for it, right? And as long as you have faith that the Tantrayana works, the tantric vehicle works, and that it's, you have faith that it is a path, valid path to enlightenment, then you can take an initiation. So that's what His Holiness has said, but it really, you still just need to listen to whatever, any Lama who you ever have a chance to, attend something like that. You just listen to what the Lama gives at that point in time, and because it's very, if you take a tantric initiation, it's a very, very deep and meaningful connection you're creating with that Lama, and so you just need to follow what they say. Right? So listen well. Therefore, it is not sufficient that the teaching be a Mahayana teaching. It is crucial that the person be a Mahayana practitioner. Right? So making that point again, doesn't matter what the teaching is called or what the tradition is called, right? If the person's Mahayana person, then what they practice is the Mahayana Dharma. Furthermore, functioning as a Mahayana practitioner depends solely on realizing the spirit of enlightenment. Hence, if you have only an intellectual understanding of the spirit, then you likewise have only an intellectual understanding of what it means to be a Mahayana practitioner. If the spirit is completely perfect, then the Mahayana practitioner is genuine. So strive for this. Now here it says only an intellectual understanding. So just to give a brief comment on this, that in the Tibetan text, it doesn't have, there's no separate word for intellectual. It says it, more literally a mere understanding or just an understanding. So just to point out that the Tibetan language and way of conceiving of knowledge growth, or the development of deepening understanding of anything, but especially spiritual practice and spiritual path, they don't divide into intellectual and not intellectual. I don't even know what would be, I guess, contradistinct from experiential maybe or something. I don't even know what would be the opposite of intellectual, but the Tibetan doesn't do that, right? The Tibetan, thinking language, there's not this notion of intellectual versus not, but it just means like a rough understanding, not having a, that deep. So my point, just to point this out, is to say, yeah, you can sit here and meditate, as we'll do in just a minute, and have an experience of bodhicitta. It's like, because it's not deep, strong, continuous in your mind at all times, doesn't mean that it's only, I wouldn't say it's only, it can't be experiential, I'll put it that way. You can still have a very, very true and meaningful experience, right, of bodhicitta, of emptiness, of impermanence, of the four truths, suffering, right, all the things that we meditate on. You can have an experience of it, even though it's not a full realization or the full development. Okay. Excuse me. Then, in regard to this, the Array of Stocks Sutra, Gandavyuha Sutra, says, O child of good lineage, the spirit of enlightenment is like the seed of all the Buddha qualities. Okay, so let's see, I guess we'll go through this one last section, just this last paragraph, and then we'll do some meditation. Because you must fully comprehend this statement, I will explain it. When water, manure, warmth, earth, etc., combine with a rice seed, they act as the causes of the rice sprout. If they combine with the seeds of wheat, peas, etc., they act as the causes of these types of sprouts. Therefore, these factors are the general causes of the sprouts. Okay, again, these factors, general causes of the sprouts, the water, the manure, the fertilizer, the soil, the heat, right? Those are general causes because they can create many different kinds of sprouts. But it is impossible for a barley seed, though it combines with those conditions, to be the cause of a sprout of rice, and so on. Okay. So many different common general causes for a sprout, but for a barley sprout, you need a barley seed. Absolutely. No other kind of seed will give you that. That's a barley seed is the specific cause of a barley sprout, and the water, manure, and so forth that are linked with that seed become the general causes of the barley sprout. Okay, so here we're getting an understanding. We're seeing that this quote from a sutra that seems maybe a little poetic or a little bit just kind of giving some nice, you know, oh, child of good lineage, this kind of flowery. It's the spirit of enlightenment. It's like the seed. No, Tsongkhapa is showing, no, it's really quite a very precise statement that's talking about how all the different kinds of spiritual qualities that we develop along the path, are contributing to some final state. And the seed is a specific cause, while the other conditions or qualities are general causes. Thus, a barley seed is the specific cause of a barley sprout, and the water, manure, and so forth that are linked with that seed become the general causes of the barley sprout. Likewise, the spirit of unsurpassed enlightenment, bodhicitta, is like the seed, the specific cause among the general causes of the sprout of Buddhahood. Right? So, to achieve Buddhahood, you absolutely need this bodhicitta. That is the seed, that's the specific cause. The wisdom that knows emptiness is the general cause of the three types of enlightenment, Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, and Bodhisattva, just as water, manure, etc. are the general causes of the sprouts. Hence, Maitreya's sublime continuum, Uttara Tantra, also states that aspiration to the supreme vehicle is the seed, wisdom is the mother for generating the Buddha qualities. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, yes, at least.
Sorry, did you say that unsurpassed enlightenment means bodhisattva or bodhicitta?
The spirit, so it's using this word, spirit of enlightenment. Here it's a spirit of unsurpassed enlightenment. The spirit is the bodhicitta. Spirit is just, they're using this phrase spirit of enlightenment. It means mind, right? Jangchupkisam, or Yanda Partsope Jangchupkisam is just unsurpassed enlightenment, the mind aspiring towards unsurpassed enlightenment, the mind aspiring towards enlightenment. They're the different, the only difference is unsurpassed, like here in this specific paragraph, right? We're talking about different types of enlightenment. So that's why he specifies unsurpassed enlightenment. Generally, in texts like Mahayana texts, you could say, generally enlightenment refers to unsurpassed enlightenment. That just means the enlightenment of a Buddha. But then there is also the enlightenment of a Shravaka and a Pratyeka Buddha. Those are nirvana, right? Those enlightenments mean nirvana. So there's Buddhahood and then nirvana. Okay, so that is that spirit is bodhicitta. Okay, so let's develop it. Okay, so everybody, please sit in a good posture and remembering how the distinction between I and you is completely dependent on where you stand right now. It's relative. So I am here, you are there, but from your perspective, you are here and I am there. So just make that shift. Exchange yourself for others. Just walk over there. Shift your inner focus, the attention of your mind over there to all other beings. Put yourself in their shoes. Now you can see that all living beings have the same wish to be happy as you. That every living being is constantly wanting just to have good states, good feelings, pleasant feelings, joy. There's so many different aspects of happiness, so many different things that we seek, hoping to get happiness. But that's the basic truth of it, seeking happiness, mental well-being, peace. And Also, none of us wish to suffer. So equalize that sense of I, spread it around all living beings. Start to see others as just as important. Cherish them just as much as you cherish yourself. And then remember, they want happiness. We all want happiness. We don't want suffering, but there's so much suffering. So much suffering. So generate the wish to free all living beings from their suffering. Compassion. That's called compassion. Generate the wish for all beings to be united with happiness and its causes. That's love and kindness, metta. Why are beings experiencing suffering instead of happiness? Because underlying all the different experiences, all the different phases of life, all the different activities that we run around doing every day, day in, day out, there are afflictions going on in the mind, mental afflictions, destructive emotions. This is preventing happiness from arising. This is creating the suffering of living beings. Attachment, desire, wanting, anger, jealousy, pride, distorting reality, cutting off our chance of mental peace. The very presence of an afflictive emotion destroys or disturbs the peace of mind. So if there's a being anywhere in the world who is not in complete peace of mind, that's a sign that there is an affliction. So this is all caused fundamentally at the root by what's called the self-grasping ignorance that grasps the self as truly existent. So this is what we identify as the main source of all the problems in the world. This is the key to Buddhist philosophy, to the path to liberation, understanding that this is an erroneous perception. This is the wisdom realizing emptiness. Right? The manure, the water, those general causes of all types of enlightenment. Seeing that this ignorance is a mistake. So how can we achieve our goal of eliminating all suffering, whether it's mine or others? No difference. All the suffering in the universe can be eliminated by removing this fundamental root of all suffering, the ignorance that grasps the self as truly existent. How do you do that? You have to first realize it yourself, and then understand how to help others realize it. Other people, how do you help them? You have to know what they think, to know how they see the world. You have to know how to communicate with them so that you can help guide them to remove their ignorance. Well, who can do that? Only someone who has no obscuration whatsoever. Only someone who can see every phenomenon in the universe clear as day. Clear as they say as having a little date in the palm of your hand. the fruit date. Who can do that? A Buddha. A Buddha is the only type of being. That's just what a Buddha is, a being who has removed all blocks, anything that blocks them from seeing everything in the world directly, including the thoughts and experiences of other beings. The Buddha sees it all. But out of compassion for all these beings who are suffering unwillingly, unintentionally, burning pains of loss, of fear, of self cherishing, of guilt, anger, of hatred, being harmed, of being maimed, of being tortured, of being killed, of starving, of dying of thirst, heat, cold. These beings trapped in the cycle of existence, wandering without any direction, without seeing the way out. We have to guide them out. I will guide them out, generate great compassion to guide all beings out of suffering. And the bodhicitta that has two aspirations, liberating all beings from their suffering and achieving enlightenment, this completely awakened state that sees all things in the universe, including the minds and thoughts of other beings, sees it all clearly as day. Generate that motivation. As Rinpoche keeps explaining, this meditation is not where we're just looking at something, we're analyzing something. Your mind is becoming the bodhicitta. Your mind is this motivation. So turn your mind into that motivation to become a Buddha for the sake of others. Instead of thinking, oh, I think I'll go out for lunch after this, I think I'll go see my friends, call my parents. Think, oh, I think I'll become Buddha after this. I think tonight I'm going to work to become Buddha. Yay, very good, everybody. Okay. Any final questions, or should we do the dedication? Okay. Put on the screen share. So we'll do that dedication from the Lamrim dedication. Okay, let's do this one verse first. It's two verses. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. From my two collections, vast is space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time. May I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the path as I have discerned them, may I uphold Buddha's teachings for a very long time. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined. May I expose this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddhist deeds be nourished for a long time. By even this graded course to enlightenment, completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their sons, may all human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths never be parted at any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhists. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. Then the long life prayer for His Holiness should be here as well. Open that and be here. Yeah, not sure, but we can just chant it for those who know it. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezin, may you stay until samsara's end. Changchu Sen Chogrim Poche, Ma Ke Panon Ke Gyurchi, Ke Pa Nyamba Me Pa Gong Ne Gong Du Pelwar Sho. Gangri Rawe Korwe Shinkambye, Pendon Dewa Malu Jungwen, Genre Zig Wang Tenzin Gatso Yi, Shabe Sipe Bardu Ten Yorchi.